This smartwatch costs $5, and it has everything you need. It can make calls, features fitness tracking, and great, it's a unisex gift for man and woman. The Apple Watch it copies costs $399, but you figure you don't need to spend all that money since you're not going to use it that much anyway. The only thing you don't know is that the cheap knockoff is going to spy on your family and is one of the main reasons your country's economy is tanking. So first, how can a device this high-tech be so cheap? To answer that, we need to understand how the economy of its home country actually works. $248 billion. That's what China spent on industrial policy in a single year. It works out to 1.73% of China's entire GDP, and it's actually more than what they spent on its own military in 2019. But where does that money go? Cheap loans from state banks, land handed to factories at a discount, sometimes free, tax rebates that refund manufacturers when they export, and state investment funds that absorb losses no private investor would touch. None of it is secret, by the way. Beijing publishes the strategy. The Made in China 2025 plan, announced in 2015, openly named the industries the state intended to dominate. Robotics, chips, and advanced electronics are among them. Here's what that means for your $5 watch. The factory that made it may operate on margins that would bankrupt an American competitor. But subsidies alone don't build a watch. For that, China needed something it spent 30 years constructing. In the 1990s, made in China meant plastic toys, cheap textiles, and Christmas decorations. The electronics inside your devices came from Japan, Taiwan, or South Korea. China just did the final assembly. But that is over. Today, China produces 30% of the world's entire manufacturing output, more than the United States, Japan, and Germany combined. A smartwatch needs a chipset, a display, a lithium battery, a vibration motor, sensors, and someone to assemble it all. And there is a perfect place for that: the Pearl River Delta. Started back in 1978 by Deng Xiaoping, the region turned farming villages into industrial powerhouses by setting up special economic zones. Today, all of these components are manufactured there, and an order takes only 2 hours to arrive by car.
But you're probably still thinking that the real reason electronics are so cheap is because of sweatshop labor. Well, you used to be right, but in 2005, everything changed.
China stopped being a source of cheap labor. Government laws and economic growth caused factory wages to quadruple. At the same time, the population aged, leaving fewer young people available to work in factories. This younger generation was better educated and preferred cleaner, easier jobs in offices or stores rather than harsh assembly lines. Today, several studies find Mexican factory labor costs lower than China's. So why didn't the factories leave? Some did. Garment work drifted to Bangladesh and Vietnam. But electronics mostly stayed, and the reason is what China bought with those rising wages: experienced workers who can be hired by the thousands in a single week, and also machines. In 2023, China installed about half of all industrial robots deployed on planet Earth. A worker who costs 3 times more but operates automated lines producing 10 times the volume is not expensive. Labor, then, explains less of your $10 price tag than you'd think. But on top of all that, there's still something that revolutionized online sales. A factory sells to an exporter. Then the exporter sells to an importer. The importer sells to a distributor. And the distributor sells to a retail chain. A product leaving the factory at $3 could hit the shelf at $30. But Temu's model deleted the entire middle. The factory lists the product, the platform handles the app and the air freight, and the package flies from Guangdong to your doorstep. The industry calls it C2M, consumer to manufacturer. And in the early days, the platform didn't even keep the remaining margin. Temu was losing around $30 per order during its American expansion, subsidizing your discount with investor money to conquer the market, the same playbook Uber used against taxis. There's still a mystery, though. The watch arrived with a brand name you've never heard of. who exactly makes these things? Search smartwatch on any of these platforms, and you'll see dozens of brands with those strange names that sound almost like words. They have different logos and different boxes, but the same 5-star reviews. Because they are actually the same physical watch. The system is called white label. Chipset companies design a complete watch and sell that blueprint to anyone. Hundreds of factories build the identical device. The brand enters at the final step. A customer pays for an order of 500 units, sends a logo file, and the factory prints it on the case and the box. 60 seconds of branding. The brand itself might be 2 people renting a seller account with no office and no idea what's in the firmware. But how do these companies pull off making such a complex product so easily? In 2014, Tim Cook walked on stage in California and unveiled the Apple Watch. Within a day of that announcement, not the launch, the announcement, vendors in Shenzhen were already showing look-alike smartwatches. And by the time the real Apple Watch reached stores in 2015, the South China Morning Post found knockoffs selling for around 300 yuan. That's about $44. And ironically, running Android. Apple had spent years and untold millions developing the product. The copiers spent months and almost nothing. There's a word for this culture, Shanzhai. It once meant mountain bandit stronghold. Now it means the copycat industry. And in Shenzhen, it operates with industrial confidence. Factories openly reverse engineer whatever sells, iterate on it, and sometimes even add features the original lacks. Every dollar Apple spends on R&D is a dollar the clone maker doesn't. That's one more subtraction from your price tag. But the last big subtraction didn't come from China at all. It was a gift from the American government. Buried in a 1938 U.S. customs law sits a rule called de minimis, Latin for about trivial things. The idea is pretty simple. Packages too small to be worth taxing shouldn't have to deal with duties or paperwork. And for decades, that threshold was just a few bucks. But in 2016, Congress raised it to 800. Chinese platforms built an empire inside that law. Instead of taxed, inspected shipping containers, they sent individual parcels. More than 1.36 billion in 2024. A congressional committee estimated Temu and Shein alone accounted for roughly a third of them. Everyone duty-free. Meanwhile, American retailers importing in bulk paid full tariffs on identical goods. But in 2025, Washington eliminated the $800 de minimis duty-free exemption for packages from China. The platform's first response was shock pricing. Temu began adding an import charges line at checkout, around 145% of an item's price, more than doubling it. Customers fled, and within days, Temu killed the charges and stopped shipping from China. The second response is how these sites survive today: local warehouses. Instead of mailing each order from China, sellers ship their inventory to America in bulk by container. The container still pays import tax, but split across 10,000 watches inside, the tax per unit becomes a fraction of what taxing each parcel would cost. The goods then sell as local, shipped from a US warehouse. No scary fees at checkout. Chinese sellers lost margin. The platforms burned cash on discounts to keep prices looking stable. The rest went where taxes always go, into the price you pay. Which forces the honest question: why was the golden era of the $5 gadget actually bad for you? Dangerous malware. That's not a tech blogger talking. That's the Attorney General of Arkansas describing the Temu app in a lawsuit filed in 2024. His claim, in plain words, the shopping is bait, and the real business is harvesting your personal data. Temu denies it, but by the end of 2025, Arizona had sued too, and other states are lining up. With children's watches, governments went further. In 2017, Germany simply banned smartwatches for kids with remote listening and told parents to destroy the ones they'd already bought. That same year, testers in Norway proved why. With cheap kids' watches, a total stranger could see a child's location and even listen through the watch's microphone without the child noticing anything. Now the US Senate wants an investigation into Chinese-linked wearables too. The concern is simple: your heart rate, your sleep, your location, ending up with companies that answer to Beijing. That's your data. The next layer is your house. One day in October 2016, Twitter, Netflix, PayPal, and dozens of major sites went dark across much of the United States for hours. The attack didn't come from a supercomputer. It came from hundreds of thousands of cheap security cameras. Hackers quietly took control of them and pointed them all at the internet's plumbing, like an army. Much of that hardware traced back to one Chinese manufacturer, which recalled its cameras in the US days later. In 2024, the FBI revealed that hackers linked to the Chinese state had been hiding inside old internet routers in ordinary American homes, using them as disguises while they studied US water and power systems. Sometimes it gets almost comic. That same year, hacked robot vacuums of a Chinese brand started chasing pets and yelling insults at their owners in several US cities. The pattern is the same every time. A cheap device, never updated, sitting on your network. And past your front door, there's one more level. What happens to the stores down the street? In March 2025, Forever 21 went bankrupt for the second time and started closing every US store. In its own court papers, the company named the culprits, Shein and Temu, selling similar products tax-free, while Forever 21 paid full import taxes. But the major problem is worse. Try to buy a smartwatch that is not made in China. Not a cheap one. Any one. You can't. Even the premium brands build there, because after decades of cheap imports, the factories, the parts suppliers, and the people who know how to make electronics simply don't exist elsewhere anymore. And that knowledge doesn't come back just because a government wants it to. So each cheap watch does double work. It saves you a few dollars today and guarantees that tomorrow there will be nowhere else to buy the next one. It means the discount was never free. Somebody always finances a miracle, and eventually they collect.